Hi, everybody. So, as you have just seen in this short video, Under the Pole explores since 15 years some of the most remote places of the oceans. Oceans are big, and there are a lot to do about their protection. After our first expedition at the North Pole, we decided to focus on what we were good at. We are deep divers. We are polar divers. We are expedition organizers. That's why we put our skills and energy in deep diving all over the world, especially in that zone that scientists call mesophotic, between 30 and 200 meters. When we speak about ocean, most of the people imagine that. A vast blue water surface. When we speak about Arctic Ocean, they often imagine an endless white desert. When we speak about the depths, they see plains of mud in the darkness. This is what we see. Parallel worlds hiding from the surface, and when you look a little bit closer, places where you can observe a great diversity of species.
Okay. These pictures were taken at the geographical North Pole, just in the middle of the Arctic Oceans. Oh, there's a small, and this is how we started with Under the Pole, and this first expedition gave the name to our expedition, Under the Pole. Maybe you can think that in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, below the ice, there's no life. But in fact, the life can be extremely diverse. And here you can see a sea angel, which is certainly one of the species that represents the most, the best, the beauty and the fragility of the Arctic Ocean. This picture was taken in Tikao, once again, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This time we are at 100 meters deep. And here, the coral coverage gives more space to some other species like Gorgona you can see here. And I can tell you, when you are lucky enough to dive at such a depth, you have a feeling to be in space. In Makatea, an elevated island of the middle of the Pacific Ocean, once again, we have discovered an exceptional coverage of coral Leptoseris from 60 to 100 meters deep. This is a very surprising richness, which calls for two other scientific missions to try to understand the blooming conditions of this spectacular garden. In Moorea, here we are. There's a little bit change in the presentation, but anyway. By 60 meters, there is a huge coral of, once again, the corals, Pachyceres corals, and that gives an overview of the reef, which is like a garden of roses. Here we are in the cold, once again, in Greenland, especially in Sisimiut, just by the end of the polar night in April. And the water is very close to the freezing point, 1.8 degrees below zero. And despite these extreme conditions, ecosystem can be prolific, especially at depth, where biodiversity is protected from the sea ice or the iceberg erosion. In Lanzarote, in Canary Island, from 50 to 100 meters deep, lies some marine animal forests of black corals, which offers habitat to a large biodiversity of species, contrasting with the arid volcanoes that lies in the surface of the island. All these pictures are just a few examples of the beauty and the diversity of the depth that lies just a little bit below what we are used to see in the oceans. Before continuing, just keep in mind that oceans are a continuity with no borders. Everything is interconnected from the surface to the great depths. So even if we can see the bottom of the oceans, our impact on shallow water will have huge consequences, especially on the mesophotic zone and their very diverse ecosystems.
Everybody knows the importance of forests on Earth. Everybody understands the role they play for species, biodiversity, and climate. When you see a forest burning or being clear-cut, you immediately understand the threat for the planet and the species. The fact is that the same problems occurs underwater. People just don't see it. Like we have forests on Earth, we have forests underwater. Marine animal forests are home to many species that found there a hunting ground, a place for reproduction. They are essential for the health of the ocean, especially now that the surface ecosystems are threatened by climate change. On this picture, you can see the analogy between a forest being clear-cut on Earth and the deep sea ground being trawled. You immediately understand that the dramatic consequences for the habitat and the species are the same. Our oceans are burning. Our ocean forests are being devastated. Garbage lies everywhere at the bottom of the ocean, especially in the depths where no one comes to pick them up. As divers, I can tell you that it is extremely rare to dive without seeing fishing gears underwater, like lines or nets. The biggest problem with the ocean is that most of the humanity cannot see below. And this problem increases with deaths or remote places like polar regions. Victim of its silence, the ocean had to wait for Paris Agreement in 2015 to recognize its central role in climate regulation. That's why the United Nations decided that this decade would be the ocean decade for ocean science for sustainable development in order to respond to this paradox. Life below 30 meters remains largely unexplored. As you can see on this graphic, knowledge decreases with deaths. And that's why they are mostly left behind conservation plans. Why is it not studied? Because it's not important? Because it is not a priority? No. It's mainly because it's very challenging to get there. And it is even more challenging to drive science in that zone. We will explain the amount of challenge just after, but it is for that reason that we decided to launch a new expedition, Deep Life, which has been recognized as a program of the Ocean Decade, because its research and results focus on this very unknown part of the ocean, but still concerning most coastline of the planet.
As a passionate diver, there is always, on each single dive we are doing, this feeling that pushes you to try to go to have a look a little bit deeper or further. This is how exploration is about curiosity and inspiration, and I think that both leads to passion. And passion can lead you to the greatest achievements as far as you work hard. You put a lot of perseverance and get patience. And this is exactly how we came to explore the high Arctic and the depths of the remote places of the world. But as Emmanuelle mentioned it, diving in the mesophotic zone can be very challenging. It is complex, it is difficult, and I will tell you why. First point, diving deep is engaged. And the deepest you go, the truest it is. For example, working 20 minutes at 120 meters deep will need about 4 hours of decompression to get back to the surface. I let you imagine that in the freezing water of the polar region. But at the same time, don't think that robots can do the same, because it is not true. Second point. Deep diving requires huge experience, specific skills, and equipment. And that is very long to get. Third point, operating science and deep diving in remote places is complex for questions of logistics, of organization, and for sure of fundings. And the deepest and the furthest you plan to go, the more complex it will be. Another point is a question of the team. Operating science and deep diving, once again, requires specialized team. And when safety is constantly in balance, combined with harsh environment and hard work, the team has to be absolutely perfectly trained for his mission. Last point, question of innovation. Pushing the limit of knowledge needs innovation. It can be technical, it can be in the approach, it can be in the ambition of the project. On this picture, you can see an underwater habitat we named Capsule. We have been developed, we have been experimented in the Pacific to observe and describe in continu the underwater world for days and nights. And just by the way, the capsule is just behind the scene, and you can have a look at it afterwards. As we have seen, exploration of the mesophotic zone is complex, but feasible in safety and with efficiency only if all conditions are met, the one I've just talked about. But today, exploration for exploration is not enough. The complexity, the costs of expedition, as well as issues such as global warming or biodiversity collapsing, can only find a meaning if combined together with science and for conservation purposes. This is why, since years, with Under the Pole, we have been doing partnership with scientists to try to answer together questions that could not be answered alone. And by the way, I would like to thank for that, for their long-term support, the Rolex Perpetual Planet initiative. So, why does the scientific exploration of the mesophotic zone matter? Because it is hope. Over our expedition, it has always been an evidence that their ecology is diverse, is complex, and is specific. Let me show you a few examples based on our scientific results. Not exactly the right PowerPoint, but we come to it. Yeah, here we are. First point, coral seascapes are more diverse at depth. The second point is that coral diversity is unexpectedly higher at depth in the mesophotic zone, especially between 40 and 60 meters deep, and not in shallow water reef. And that goes exactly the opposite of what usually everybody thinks. On the Deep Hope mission in 2019, led by Laetitia Edouin from the CNRS, we discovered the deepest coral at 172 meters. This is a picture, revealing that coral can live much deeper than the scientific community thought. Mesophotic corals are nearly not impacted by bleaching in shallow waters. And this raises a potential refuge from the global warming. Those four examples show that in a part of the ocean that nobody can see from the surface, the mesophotic zone, there are very rich ecosystems. Their protection calls for huge scientific knowledge, and this is why we keep going exploring them through the Deep Life program. We can call them hope for the ocean if we protect them now, and this is why there is an urgency to make the invisible visible.
So, making science if results are not shared, it's not enough. To spread the knowledge about oceans, you need to infiltrate everywhere, to communicate in different ways, to reach different audiences. In the media, in the social medias, we try to show the beauty and the importance of those ecosystems with documentary, book, and podcast. We invite artists on board in residency to share results. And we give public conference, like today. And because, again, our work cannot be separated from what it is done on the surface or in the abyss, we are stronger working together with NGOs such as UICN or the Ocean Climate Platform. We take part in national or international conferences to make known the stakes of the Mesophotic zone. For example, here is Ghislain speaking at the UICN World Congress with our scientific director, Lorenzo Bramanti. With them, we contribute in reports or advocacy campaign. But most of all, we believe education is a priority if we want to change the way we treat our ocean. That's why we make interventions in school, but also on the field. Here you can see kids visiting our sailing boat Y and meeting a scientist who shows them one of the samples we took underwater. Here is Tim, a Greenlandic boy. While we were in Greenland, we took Greenlanders from all ages under the sea ice to show them the hiding face of their environment. In French Polynesia, we met more than 1,000 kids in 12 different islands, explaining the importance of coral reefs. Finally, we are aware that many people do not have access to the ocean. As we say, out of sight, out of mind. You may have seen a blue caravan in the outdoor part of ChangeNOW. It is our solution to bring the sea to the land. A mobile unit to meet all audiences, whose final objective is to explain the impact of our actions on land, on the ocean. Education is maybe one of my favorite things about our job, because you can immediately feel the impact you have.
And by the way, please don't hesitate to go to visit the caravan, which is just outside, close to the coffee restoration place. So here we are. We hope that today you discovered with us a new world and a new word, the Mesophotic. It is a complicated word, but a beautiful place we need to protect. Thank you very much for your attention, and thanks for ChangeNOW.
Wow.